Okay, this is test number 2 from IELTS 8, book IELTS 8, and obviously it's the listening. For these listenings, I don't know what I'm going to listen to. I haven't done these tests before, so I'm going to try and do these tests to see the same problems that you might face, and we'll go and do them together. And I'll show you the step-by-step reasons for the answers. Okay, so let's have a look at the first part, section 1. As I always say, use the 30 seconds or the 45 seconds before the listening starts to have a look at what is is on the page, so you can make some predictions about what might come. So let's have a look at this one here. So it's about insurance. Who's talking? Why are they talking? So let's check.
You will hear a conversation between a representative of an insurance company and a customer. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 3.
Okay, so a conversation, maybe on the telephone, between a customer and a representative of an insurance company. We're looking for something here, perhaps a town or a suburb of Sydney. A shipping agent, this will be a capital letter because it'll be a name of a company. The date of arrival, obviously these will be numbers. So let's listen.
Good morning, Total Insurance. Judy speaking. How may I help you?
I recently shipped my belongings from overseas back here to Australia, and I took out insurance with your company. Some items were damaged during the move, so I need to make a claim. What do I have to do?
Okay, well, first I need to get a few details about this. Can you give me your name, please?
Yes, it's Michael Alexander.
Okay, and your address, please?
My old address or my current one?
Your current one.
It's 24 Manly Street, Milperra, near Sydney.
What was the suburb, sorry?
Milperra, Milperra.
Right. Now, who was the shipping agent, Mr. Alexander?
You mean the company we used?
Yes, the company who packed everything up at the point of origin.
Oh, it was, First Class Movers.
Okay. Where were the goods shipped from?
China, but the ship came via Singapore and was there for about a week.
Don't worry, all of that information will be in the documentation. Now, the dates. Do you know when the ship arrived?
It left on the 11th of October and got to Sydney on the 28th of November.
Okay. I need one more thing. There's a reference number. It should be in the top right-hand corner of the pink form they gave you.
Let me have a look. I have so many papers. Yes, here it is. It's 601ACK.
Thanks.
Okay, so you can see here that I started writing when it started, the 11th of October, but you can see that in fact this is the answer here, so we'll scrap that one. Also notice I put one ST for first because it's just quicker to write. I might later on, when I'm filling in the actual answer, I might change that just to be safe to the word first when I'm given time at the end.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 4 to 10.
Okay, so there's your time to look at questions 4 to 10. So we're still talking about this this damaged item, and so we look at each column to see what it's going to be talking about. So the item is the television. What's the damage? The needs to be replaced. So it'll be a part of something on the TV. And the cost to replace. Okay, and the number 5, the something cabinet. It would be a collocation with cabinet. And again, this is a part of a cabinet. And here we've got a number because of the dollars. Then number 8 is split. So there's something going to be on the table, probably a leg. But listen out because they try to trick you, so it might be something else. And then a set of china, which is basically porcelain, like a tea set or maybe a set of plates, cups. And 6 something were broken. 6 cups were broken, 6 plates were broken, so we're listening for that. And again, we're listening for a number. Okay, so how much time were we given? Let's just see. That will be 4:16, and that's... So you're given about 30 seconds to do this
Now
part,
listen and answer questions 4 to 10.
I need to take down a few details of the actual damage over the phone before you put in a full report. Can you tell me how many items were damaged and what the damage was?
Yes, well, 4 things actually. I'll start with the big things. My TV, first of all. It's a large one, very expensive.
Insurance doesn't cover electrical problems.
It isn't an electrical problem. The screen has a huge crack in it, so it's unusable.
I see. Any idea of the price to repair it?
No. Well, I don't think it can be repaired. It will need a new one.
Okay, I'll make a note of that and we'll see what we can do. Now, what was the second item?
The cabinet from the bathroom was damaged as well. It's a lovely cabinet. We use it to keep our towels in.
And what is the extent of the damage?
Well, the back and the sides seem okay, but the door has a huge hole in it. It can't be repaired. I'm really not very happy about it.
And how much do you think it will cost to replace it?
Well, when I bought it last year, I paid $125 for it. But the one I've seen here in Sydney is a bit more expensive. It's $140.
Right. And what was the third item?
My dining room table. It's a lovely table from Indonesia. It must have been very hot inside the container because one leg has completely split down the middle. The top and the other 3 look okay, thank goodness.
Any idea of the price to repair it?
Well, I had an estimate done on this actually because it is a very special table to us. They quoted us $200, which is really pricey, so I hope the insurance will cover the total cost.
I'm sure that will be fine. What was the last item, Mr. Alexander?
Well, we have a lovely set of china plates and dishes, with matching cups, saucers, the lot. They were all in the one box, which must have got dropped because some plates were broken. 6, actually.
And can you tell me the replacement value of these?
Well, it's hard to say because they were part of a set, but they can be up to $10 each, as it's such a good set.
Okay, so that would be around $60 altogether.
Yes, that's right.
And is that all of the items?
Yes. So, what do I have to do now?
Okay, so that was relatively painless. Just be careful of things like this when they mention 125. Obviously, that was what he paid for it, but he believes it's gone up in price, so it's actually 140. Okay, so that's part 1 done. Let's just double check that the answers are correct. So we had Milpera first class. Notice how they've spelt it as a word. I don't think you would be penalized if you put the number 1 ST, but it's still better to be safe. 28th of November, the whole word they want. It's not worth putting NOV dot. You might get the point, but it's better to write the whole word. Screen, we had bathroom door, 140 leg plates and 60, so we got all of those correct. Right, let's move on to section 2 now. Okay, so now we're at part 2, or section 2, question 11, and this is a very general question. According to the speaker, the main purposes of the park are, and you have to choose A, B or C. And then if you look down here, you have to label the plan with things that they say in the listening. What I always suggest is not to look at the ABC options because 2 of them are trying to distract you. So always focus most of your attention on the question itself. According to the speaker, the person who's speaking, the main purposes of the park are. Okay, so let's listen and check.
Section 2. You will hear an introductory talk about a new agricultural park. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14.
Okay, and it's always very important to listen, obviously, to what the introduction says, because that's going to help you for your brain to get ready to listen to what comes next. So it's about an agricultural park. Okay.
11 to 14.
Welcome to Greenvale Agricultural Park. As you know, we've only been open a week, so you're amongst our first visitors. We have lots of fascinating indoor and outdoor exhibits on our huge complex, spreading hundreds of hectares. Our remit is to give educational opportunities to the wider public, as well as to offer research sites for a wide variety of agriculturists and other scientists. Let's start by seeing what there is to do. As you can see here on our giant wall plan, we are now situated in the reception block here. As you walk out of the main door into the park, there's a path you can follow. If you follow this route, you'll immediately come into the rare breeds section, where we keep a wide variety of animals, which I shall be telling you a little more about later. Next to this, moving east, is the large grazing area for the rare breeds. Then further east, in the largest section of our park, is the forest area. South of the grazing area, and in fact just next to the reception block, is our experimental crop area. In the middle of the park, this circular area, is our lake. These two small rectangular shapes here are the fish farms where we rear fish for sale. To the east of those is the marsh area, which attracts a great many migrant birds. In the southeastern corner, beyond the marsh, is our market garden area, growing vegetables and flowers.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20.
Okay. As you've noticed, no doubt, I missed that. And I'm an English teacher. I was expecting them to give us a little bit more time to say something. And to be quite honest, I would have missed it, and I wouldn't have got a 9 out of from IELTS because I wasn't listening carefully. So remit is the main purpose, our main goal. So let's just listen again.
We have lots of fascinating indoor and outdoor exhibits on our huge complex, spreading hundreds of hectares. Our remit is to give educational opportunities to the wider public, as well as to offer research sites for a wide variety of agriculture.
Okay, so research and education. Very embarrassing. Okay, and let's move on to the second part. It's still this man talking.
Culturists.
And answer questions 15 to 20.
Okay, so they're going to give us a little bit of time. That looks like about 30 seconds there. Okay, in this 30-second time period, we have a chance to look at the questions. As I said before, try to avoid spending too much time looking at these because two of them are trying to distract you. So when, so underline the important words, when are they closed to the public? The experimental areas at least, in fact, all of that's important. How can you move around the park? Okay, the rare breed animals kept in the park include. Now we're going to listen for two things. So you need to listen for two items there. Goats and hens. You can see here very quickly. What are the main purpose? What is the main purpose of having the rare breed section? So main purpose, rare breed section. That's a typical one that might try to trick you. So try to avoid looking at that too much. What can you see in the park at the present time? Okay, remember it's only been open a week, so it's relatively new. And there's a chance that something will open later on, so don't get tricked. It's only what's available right now. And then question 20, the shop contains books about, and obviously try to avoid getting confused there. Okay, let's listen.
All these areas can be visited by the general public for almost all the year. Although, please take note of the large signs at the entrance to each area, which tell you when certain areas are being used for particular controlled experiments and are therefore temporarily out of bounds to the public. You can see for yourself what a huge area the park covers, and a key question is always, how can we move around? Well, you have a choice of means, all environmentally friendly. Cars are banned in the park. We have bicycles, which you can hire behind the reception block here. The healthy ones of you can go on foot. And finally, there's our electric tram, powered from solar cells. You find more information about this at the front entrance. A good place to start on your tour is the rare breed section. We keep goats, sheep and hens and other kinds of poultry. We're also thinking of bringing in cows and horses, but we do not as yet have facilities for these bigger animals. The animals are fed in public twice a day, and a short lecture given on their feeding habits and nutritional needs. These are very popular with the public, but of course we mustn't lose sight of the main purpose of having this section, not as such to preserve rare animals, but to maintain the diversity of breeds, to broaden the gene pool for agricultural development. Greenvale changes with the seasons, with different events happening at different times of the year. May will be perhaps our most spectacular month, with the arrival of the Canada geese, and when our fruit trees will be in full blossom. But there are interesting events on all year round. For example, John Havers, our expert fly fisherman, is currently giving displays on the lake. Each of the sections has its own seasonal calendar, and please consult the summary board at the main entrance. And the final section, as we return to the reception blocks, is the orchard. Do take time to browse round our shop. There's a wide selection of books on wildlife, some of them written by local authors, and the history of farming, including organic farming, something which the park will be diversifying into in the coming months.
That is the end of section 2.
Okay, so a little bit tricky, this one. You had to eliminate. It's good. May will be, and obviously will talks about the future. So you had to select the only option. That's why I did it before I even heard. And wildlife, it came right at the beginning. And often IELTS, they give you a little bit of time to think about it. But wildlife obviously is a synonym for animals. The same thing here with the sheep. It wasn't mentioned. And then cows and horses, they will have them. The rest is relatively straightforward. We check the answers. So we had B for number 11, and whoops, sorry, that's down here. So yeah, we've got B. Then forest, the forest or forest would have been fine. Fish farms with an S, don't forget. Market garden, there you go. You don't have to capitalize these things. It's you wouldn't get penalized for that. Then 15 is C, which is what we had. Temporarily closed, short time. A for because of the tram, the solar powered tram, not the solar powered car. They said cars were banned, so you could have actually cancelled that one there. Number 17 is C, that's goats and hens and sheep, which is not mentioned at all here. Number 18, B, to keep a variety of breeds, maintain diversity. And 19C, a demonstration of fishing will be all year round because May is only in the present, in the future. And then wildlife, animals, A. Okay, let's move on. Right, so now we've got section 3 talking about honeybees in Australia. And let's listen to the introduction. What are we going to listen to? Of course, it's very important. Like before, it was somebody obviously standing up in front of you, talking to you at an agricultural park. And these sort of things are important because you can get an idea of what who's talking, why are they talking. So let's listen to the introduction.
Section 3. You will hear part of a seminar in which a researcher called Grant Freeman discusses his work on Australian honeybees with a group of students. First,
okay, so a seminar, like a lecture, and he's obviously a professor or he's a researcher, and he's going to be talking with students. Okay, so this looks like about 30 seconds, so let's have a quick look at this. Again, avoid looking at those too much. Where in Australia been found in the past. That's very important. A problem is that what do they do? Okay. Number 3, what point is made? What point is made? Now this one's a bit tricky. You might want to have a look at these because the honey varies. The size stops when they pollute from polluting some flowers. Stops them from polluting, sorry. And they are sold to customers abroad. Okay, so listen up. For one of those will be right. Grant Freeman, I assume this is the same man, says that if honeybees got into Australia, Asian honeybees got into Australia, there would probably be a negative effect. But let's just listen. Okay.
And answer questions 21 to 24.
Good morning, everyone. In today's seminar, Grant Freeman, a biologist who specialises in identifying insects and who works for the Australian Quarantine Service, has come to talk to us about his current research work. Right, well, over to you, Grant.
Good morning, everyone. I'm sure that you know that the Quarantine Service regulates all food brought into Australia. Well, obviously they want to protect Australia from diseases that might come in with imported goods, but they also want to prevent insect pests from being introduced into the country, and that's where I have a part to play. Anyway, my current research involves trying to find a particular type of bee, the Asian honeybee, and finding out whether there are any of them around in various states of Australia. We discovered a few of them in Queensland once and eradicated them. Now we're pretty keen to make sure that there aren't any more getting in, particularly to New South Wales and other states.
What's wrong with Asian honeybees? Are they so different from Australian bees?
Well, in fact, they look almost the same, but they are infested with mites, microscopic creatures which live on them, and which can seriously damage our own homegrown bees, or could even wipe them out.
Well, what would happen if Australian bees died out?
Well, the honey from Australian bees is of excellent quality, much better than the stuff the Asian bees produce. In fact, Australia exports native queen bees to a large number of countries because of this. When the European honeybee was first discovered out in the bush, we found they made really unpleasant honey, and they were also too big to pollinate many of our native flowers here in Australia.
That must have had a devastating effect on the natural flora. Did you lose any species?
No, we managed to get them under control before that happened. But if Asian bees got in, there could be other consequences. We could lose a lot of money because, you might not be aware, but it's estimated that native bees' pollination of flower and vegetable crops is worth $1.2 billion a year. So in a way, they're the farmer's friend. Oh, and another thing is, if you're stung by an Asian honeybee, it can produce an allergic reaction in some people, so they're much more dangerous than native bees.
Okay. Not too bad. Obviously, it's not studying allergies because they would mention something about danger or the dangers of it. So I'm pretty sure those are the answers. Okay, let's go on to questions 25 and we'll check the answers later. Let's just make sure we understand this. Looking for Asian honeybees. Okay, birds called rainbow bee eaters eat only something and cough up small bits of skeleton and other products in a pellet. If you don't know what that is, you can guess what it is. It's a piece of poo, I suppose, from the bird. So they eat only what? What do they eat? Something of the bees. Then they go to locations that the bee eaters, researchers, so these are people, go to the locations that the bee eaters like to use for research. Why would they go there? They collect the pellets, the poo of the bird, and take them to for analysis. Must be a place or something. Here, something is used to soften them. Fire, heat, water, perhaps. And the researchers look for the of Asian bees in the pellets. Look for the something of Asian bees. It could be a part of the Asian bees. And then the final part, the benefit of this research is that the result is more successful, perhaps, more successful than searching for live Asian bees. Okay, let's listen.
Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
How will you know if Asian bees have entered Australia?
We're looking at the diet of the bird called the rainbow bee eater. The bee eater doesn't care what it eats as long as they're insects. But the interesting thing about this bird is that we are able to analyse exactly what it eats, and that's really helpful if we're looking for introduced insects.
How come?
Because insects have their skeletons outside their bodies, so the bee eaters digest the meat from the inside. Then they bring up all the indigestible bits of skeleton, and of course the wings, in a pellet, a small ball of waste material which they cough up.
That sounds a bit unpleasant. So how do you go about it?
In the field, we track down the bee eaters and find their favourite feeding spots, the places where the birds usually feed. It's here that we can find the pellets. We collect them up and take them back to the laboratory to examine the contents.
How do you do that?
The pellets are really hard, especially if they've been out in the sun for a few days. So, first of all, we treat them by adding water to moisten them and make them softer. Then we pull them apart under the microscope. Everything's all scrunched up, but we're looking for wings, so we just pull them all out and straighten them. Then we identify them to see if we can find any Asian bee wings.
And how many have you found?
So far, our research shows that Asian bees have not entered Australia in any number. It's a good result and much more reliable than trying to find live ones as evidence of introduced insects.
Well, that's fascinating. Thank you, Grant, for those insights. I hope that you might inspire some of our students here to conduct some similar experiments.
Okay, so let's have a look at the answers and check if we're right. So here we're going to go to section 3 up here. So that's A Queensland, because they once found them in Queensland. They're checking that they're not being affected in New South Wales now. So in the past, once Queensland A. B, same. They have they have microscopic mites, which are parasites, and they damage Australian bees, or they hurt Australian bees, not crops. So it can't be C. What's the point made? C. They are sold to customers abroad. They export them. Their quality is consistently good. So varies is not the case. And then their size stops them from pollinating some flowers. He's talking about European bees, not Australian bees. And then number 24 is A. They would lose money, and it's not to study. It's dangerous for people with allergies, so it can't be B. And certain areas of agriculture would benefit. I missed that. I think they talked about every part of agriculture would benefit. Sorry. They did not talk about benefits in any way. They always talked about negative things. So, because we're talking about Asian honeybees, not Australian ones. So C is out. Okay, let's have a look at this one here now. Looking for Asian honeybees. Let's have a look. So they spoke about insects with an S. They only eat insects. Remember, in the listening, there's no grammar there's no grammar test in IELTS, and these sort of things are checking your grammar. Basic things like an S would know whether you're grammatically accurate. Feeding or eating. They didn't actually say the word eating, but it's implied because they're using the word eaters. So they use for feeding or eating would be fine. Laboratory, check the spelling. Laboratory, an A, not an I, not an O. Here, water is used to soften them, yes. They look for the wings of the bees, and then reliable and accurate you could also put here, because they are synonyms. And they collocate. More accurate than is a synonym, and it collocates with these two words as well, so that'd be fine. it collocates with result. So the result is accurate, the result is reliable, has the same meaning. Okay, we're coming to the final section, section 4, and this is research on questions about doctors. Okay, again, we're going to be listening to the introduction, so we have an idea of who's talking, why are they talking to you, etc.
You will hear a student called Shona giving a presentation on her research report. First, you have...
Okay, so Shona is giving a presentation on her research report, and obviously it's about doctors. Okay, again, that looks like, let's have a look, 11 seconds to... Oh, that's quite generous. So you've got about 50 seconds now to look at these questions. Okay, so let's have a look. Research on questions about doctors. In order to set up her research program, Shona got, what did she get so that she could do the research? Probably money, maybe time. Number 32, what types of people were included in the research? Types of people included. It's about doctors, so that's interesting. Are they going to be patients as well as doctors, etc.? What type of doctors? Shona says that in her questionnaire, her aim was... What was her aim? In her questionnaire, her aim was... Okay, so she must have made a questionnaire or something. What was her... There's only one aim, it seems, so listen for that. What do Shona's initial results show about medical services in Britain? Initial results. Okay, it's important. And in Britain. And then medical services. Shona needs to do further research in order to, or so that, so she needs further research, so in the future obviously. And then Shona has learnt from the research project that. Okay, alright, so let's listen.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
I've been doing some research into what people in Britain think of doctors, the ones who work in general practice, the first call for medical care, and comparing this with the situation in a couple of other countries. I want to talk about the rationale behind what I decided to do. Now, I had to set up my program of research in 3 different countries, so I approached postgraduates in my field in overseas departments, contacting them by email to organize things for me at their end. I thought I would have trouble recruiting help, but in fact, everyone was very willing, and sometimes their tutors got involved too. I had to give my helpers clear instructions about what kind of sample population I wanted them to use. I decided that people under 18 should be excluded because most of them are students or looking for their first job. And also I decided at this stage just to focus on men who were in employment and set up something for people who didn't have jobs and for employed women later on as a separate investigation. I specifically wanted to do a questionnaire and interviews with a focus group. With the questionnaire, rather than limiting it to one specific point, I wanted to include as much variety as possible. I know questionnaires are a very controlled way to do things, but I thought I could do taped interviews later on to counteract the effects of this. And the focus group may also prove useful in future by targeting subjects I can easily return to, as the participants tend to be more involved. So I'm just collating the results now. At the moment, it looks as if in the UK, despite the fact that newspapers continually report that people are unhappy with medical care, in fact, it is mainly the 3rd level of care, which takes place in hospitals, that they are worried about. Government reforms have been proposed at all levels, and although their success is not guaranteed, long-term hospital care is in fact probably less of an issue than the media would have us believe. However, I've still got quite a bit of data to look at. Certainly, I will need to do more far-reaching research than I had anticipated in order to establish if people want extra medical staff invested in the community, or if they want care to revert to fewer but larger key medical units. The solution may well be something that can be easily implemented by those responsible in local government, with central government support, of course. This first stage has proved very valuable, though. I was surprised by how willing most of the subjects were to get involved in the project. I had expected some unwillingness to answer questions honestly, but I was taken aback and rather concerned that something I thought I'd set up very well didn't necessarily seem that way to everyone in my own department. I thought you might also be interested in some of the problems I encountered in collecting my data.
Okay, it turns out that 50 seconds isn't that generous because we've got another page, of course, here. So let's quickly have a look at this. Choose 4 answers from the box and write the correct letter A to F next to the questions. So we've only got 4 options here, but 6 questions. Person interviewed in the street, an undergraduate. Think for another word, maybe a first-year student, a colleague in her department, and a tutor at a foreign university. They're going to be saying something about these people. Okay, just quickly go through here. Refused to tell me the job. Became angry, worried about confidentiality. Okay, so let's listen.
I thought you might also be interested in some of the problems I encountered in collecting my data. There were odd cases that threw me. One of the subjects, who I had approached while he was out shopping in town, decided to pull out when it came to the second round. It was a shame, as it was someone who I would like to have interviewed more closely. And one of the first-year students I interviewed wanted reassurance that no names would be traceable from the answers. I was so surprised, because they think nothing of telling you about themselves and their opinions in seminar groups. Then one of the people that I worked with got a bit funny. The questions were quite personal, and one minute he said he'd do it, then the next day he wouldn't. And in the end, he did do it. It's hard not to get angry in that situation, but I tried to keep focused on the overall picture in order to stay calm. The most bizarre case was a telephone interview I did with a teacher at a university in France. He answered all my questions in great detail, but then when I asked how much access he had to dangerous substances, he wouldn't tell me exactly what his work involved. It was a real eye-opener.
Okay, let's check the answers over here. So, question 31, let's go over here. We have 31 as B, and B, help from other students in other countries. Information from her tutor's contacts. No, there was the students themselves who would give her access to their tutors. Advice from personal friends in other countries. No, she's talking about other students in general. What types of people? We said B, by elimination. 33A. I meant to put that there, to get a wide range of data, wide range variety. Okay. 34A, yes. Current concerns are misrepresented by the media. She started with, now what was it? Something about, despite what the newspaper says, blah, 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 in fact. So this gives you an idea of that they're going to say something about misrepresentation by newspapers, the press, media. 35 was C, good. They were talking about two things and giving them the option, or giving them the choice. There we go, preference and choice, so it's C there. 36 is C. She was concerned. It seemed some people didn't see it that way. I think that's what I'm supposed to write. Just listen again to that.
Detected some unwillingness to answer questions honestly, but I was taken aback and rather concerned that something I thought I'd set up very well didn't necessarily seem that way to everyone in my own department.
Okay, she thought it was good, but they didn't see it the same way, therefore they disagreed. Okay, let's have a look at this one here now. So that is 37. Oops. 37B. That is person interviewed in the street. B, good. In town, out shopping, I think she said. And F, yes, didn't want any names, confidentiality there. 39D, a colleague in the department. D, they kept changing their mind. So yes, no, I don't want to do it, and then yes again. And finally C, a tutor in a foreign university. He refused to tell her, he wouldn't tell her about his job. Okay, so that is the end of the test. I hope that was useful, and feel free to write any comments below and I'll see what I can do to answer them. Thank you.